Welcome to Travel Buddy, presented by Switchfly. In this podcast, we talk about all things travel, rewards, and loyalty. Let's get to it.
We've got lots to talk about today on the question of, is AI actually ending travel marketing as we know it, or is it just reshaping it? And we're talking about this today because there was a FocusWire article that came out to talk about, they had a summit about how AI is disrupting or not travel marketing. And they had a lot of big influencers there, and influencers by way of their leaders at major travel brands. And everybody was pontificating about their thoughts, some of which we disagree with, and we have lots of thoughts ourselves. And so we have Rachel Satow, as always, and we have a special guest back again, Jessica Steinberg. And so we are going to talk about AI and travel marketing. Rachel, talk to me about this. What are your thoughts on this article? Because I know we were talking about this before the show. We got lots of thoughts. Give it to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, before we hopped on, we were talking about how there really were two very distinct opinions that came out of the Focus, right? Travel Marketing AI Summit. And on one hand, you had leaders in the industry saying that all traditional marketing channels are gone. Fundamentally, we need to accept that all of our traditional, everything we know as marketers is just out the door because of AI. And then on the other side, you have leaders who were saying, this hasn't changed what we're doing fundamentally. Like, we're incorporating new aspects into our systems, but we are not, steering away from some of the core marketing channels. And I think, we were talking about this before we started recording. I lean a little bit more towards the individuals who are saying it is starting to be incorporated, but the traditional marketing channels as we know it are not fully going away. In my opinion, they are just going to evolve, as we've seen a million other things evolve as technology advances. So from that article, we got talking about how is this really going to affect travel marketing, and that's why we wanted Jess to join. She has been fundamental from Switchfly's side in helping our partners market travel rewards, and she and I got talking, and we were like, we have to talk about this because we both have some very interesting thoughts on that there will always be an audience for those who are not wanting the latest and greatest in tech. And as marketers, we tend to live and breathe what the most cutting edge implementation might be, what the latest tool is that we can use. How can we make our jobs easier with AI? How can we... I had a former boss who once said, if I can do it in fewer clicks, I'm going to. And that has always stuck with me because I think as marketers, we inherently lean that way. And we need to be reminded that there is always going to be an audience who either one, doesn't want to click at all. They want to pick up the phone, or two, they are just so behind in learning what is the latest and greatest that they need those existing channels to exist to continue to get the information that they are wanting. So that's my 2 cents overall on this topic. Jess, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think if you were to stop all other traditional marketing and just focus on the world of AI, you'd probably be missing a whole bunch of your customers. I think there's an older generation that will just not pick up AI the way the younger generation has and probably will continue to. So I think depending on who your core customer is, that really matters, and making sure you're juggling all the balls and adding the AI ball rather than dropping all the rest of them is really important. I do think it's going to shift how a few generations search for travel and think about how they want to travel and where they want to travel. So I think taking into account that change is going to be super important. But I think it's just changing how we market and when and where versus, dropping all of the other marketing channels entirely, for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I would say the other angle I would get to, and that sums up my thoughts, is, and I should preface to say, I love AI tools. I have all the MCPs connected to all the things with the GitHub files. And I would say I'm fairly advanced at it, above average at least. But marketing and people buying things has always been about trust and relationships. And so, of course, AI is going to be phenomenal at doing certain things, but it always comes back down to trust, which means you have to have great brand. brand awareness. You have to have great social media. You have to have great influencer marketing, if you will, because it's still built on relationships. That's why word of mouth marketing is still the most powerful form of marketing that has ever existed, because we've been doing it for thousands of years. Happened to me just this morning. I almost bought this spray to get rid of my congestion that I put in the shower because somebody recommended it to me because they told me a great story about how it works. And we love stories, and we love trusting other people that recommend things to us. I'll get off my soapbox. But I want to jump on, Jessica, what you were talking about earlier about like the way people are going to be searching and finding things. So let's talk about the funnel. Tell us what you're experiencing on the way that the funnel is maybe changing, or what we could be adding to the typical marketing mix that would get the best of both worlds so that we don't drop any of the balls, like you're saying.
Yeah, I think a lot of customers, and I know I can speak for myself when I say this because I do this all the time. I think a lot of that kind of discovery phase, the where should I go, when should I go, how should I go, just figuring out what the trip is going to look like at the highest level, I think is now starting, at least for, I think, the younger generation with Claude, with ChatGPT. I want to go to a warm place this month. I have this much time off. Give me suggestions. And then I've gone as far as to have it build an itinerary for me. These are the things I like to do. And then by the time I'm done with, ChatGPT or whatever AI tool I'm talking to, I'm now pretty much ready to book, or pretty much ready to find the best deal. So it's going to matter more and more, that middle to lower funnel engagement from a brand perspective. And it's going to matter even more, especially from a Switchfly perspective, that booking flow experience. If the customer is coming to you already primed versus, at the higher level of the funnel, then you need to be ready. The booking flow needs to be a good experience. The messaging needs to be there, and the product needs to be what they're looking for. So I think it's almost like compressing the funnel for a lot of brands, because by the time the customer gets to you, they're already past the consideration stage and they're looking for the best deal, the best value. And so making sure that you're there when that happens, I think is going to be extra important moving forward.
That's great. Yeah, and that brings in, people have been talking about AEO or GEO, which is the basically the SEO equivalent in the AI space. And that there can be some things there that's really helpful, like the way that you're creating content or the way that you're building your marketing infrastructure. You can get surfaced in these results, which can be great. And I know there's platforms considering adding ads into that space, which will further, clarify or produce the kind of traffic that we want to see in the middle of bottom funnel.
Totally. And I think it changes specifically the way content needs to be written on trusted brand sites. It's less about including, one specific vacation package keyword over and over, and more about including the longer form actual question and answer. So FAQs, I think, are going to become huge, making sure that you're showing up when AI does crawl at your site. And so I actually did a little exercise before I went onto AI, asked it, what are the benefits of bundling with this package brand versus booking the flights and hotels separately? And it pulled up that brand's FAQs from their website. Obviously, then you can click through and read. But if a customer is doing their research and that's what comes up first, I think you're winning. And so again, kind of focusing on those longer form actual questions that people are typing into AI versus just vacation packages. I think that's going to become a huge focus.
Or voice too, the way the natural language processing is, what we're talking about. So in natural language, how people are with their voice talking into Claude or ChatGPT or typing things out is the way to be thinking about it. That's great. Rachel, what are your thoughts?
So this brings up something. I was at Loyalty Expo by Loyalty 360 last week, and I attended one of the sessions by Salesforce on conversational marketing, and especially in how AI is being applied for conversational marketing and how this is probably going to be what we see the most from a marketing perspective and application of like real world application. And Salesforce actually demoed a chatbot that they implemented or they are testing that goes back and forth with you regarding how you can redeem loyalty points for specific things. And one of the examples they used was just type in that you want to redeem loyalty points for a specific type of vacation. So Jess, like to your example, you had mentioned that you're using it for travel planning and you have this amount of time off and you want to go to a warm location that has a beach, etc. What Salesforce demoed was a tool that essentially allowed users to turn that interaction with AI into a full conversation rather than answer output like most ChatGPT, Claude, etc. currently are functioning as. The way they are implementing AI is allowing that to turn into a conversation. And I think it goes back to, Brandon, your point regarding we trust each other more than we trust the internet and the robots that exist there. And that shift into conversational marketing, I think, really showcases that at our core, humans will always want an interaction that parallels talking to a close friend while accessing the knowledge base of AI. And there was a great article by the Von Mack agency that goes into this a little bit more and how it says it's community that's rewiring travel marketing in 2026. And the first headline in that article says, we don't trust the internet anymore, but we still trust each other. And I think all of the tools and applications from a travel marketing standpoint are going to shift to how closely we can parallel conversations between each other and how AI can power that in order to make sure, people are accessing things in the easiest way possible, but also in a more humanized version of AI, which is kind of a weird concept to think about.
Yes, I love that. I think that's exactly right. Now, I think people will not trust AI in that sense, but they will have the experience that mimics it. And so let's say you get 90% of the way there. That's still, if you're 90% as effective as word of mouth marketing, that's hugely powerful. I would be all for that. Because imagine you call up your major airline, you're like, hey, I want to book a flight. And you have this thing that is talking to you like a person, and you don't have to wait on any kind of phone tree or wait for a representative. You get it done immediately and it's done right the right time. That sounds great. Now, it doesn't have exactly what makes up a human relationship, but I think that's great. Obviously there's lots of technology and rules and all that kind of stuff involved in that kind of thing. But yeah, I agree. I think that's really exciting. I want to talk real quick about personalization. I was thinking about this, 10 years ago, it was the big topic was personalization using big data, data lakes and data warehouses to go through 10 zillion rows of contact information, yada, yada. But how do you guys see personalization now with AI in a marketing context in the travel industry?
I think by default, you're now automatically basically getting a personalized experience just by what you put into AI. But I do think there's kind of this level, I think, of expectation for a lot of the bigger brands that things just be personalized. I think at this point, if brands are not speaking to customers in a way that makes sense to them about products that they think they'll be interested in, they're behind the curve. I think it's commonplace now. And again, when I interact with a brand, if they don't already know something about me, I'm honestly, and I end up a little bit disappointed. So I kind of expect it going in these days.
High bar. Yeah, it's hard to do because you got to match all the technology with all the content and make sure that experience is really buttoned up. But yeah, sadly, I even have that expectation. I was served an ad recently. I was like, I have 2 kids. You think I'm going to go rock climbing right now? Absolutely. Anyway. So I want to talk about opportunities. What do you guys see as opportunities that marketers in the travel industry should or should not be doing? Things that are actually really exciting. Okay, this is a huge moment for lots of different industries, but particularly in marketing, because as this technology is in its infancy, it's actually impacting marketing probably as much as software development. Those two go hand in hand in a lot of different ways. So what do you think are some real opportunities, maybe some threats, things to look out for, or some advice you might have?
I think especially for me, working in the travel marketing space, I think it just allows at the forefront for me to move faster, try new things, propose new things to customers that we're working with, and making sure that we're still being genuine and authentic, depending on the brand that we're working with. I think even though you can move really quickly and AI can help you write copy or create an email marketing campaign or give you insights to some of the data that you have, that you need to still be feeding it. I think, what you put in is what you get out. And so if you're feeding it kind of an unauthentic brand story and things like that, you're going to get the same back out. But I think it's really important to use again, that authentic brand storytelling lens to give it what it needs to give you something good back. So it can help you move faster, but I think it's really important to make sure that the quality doesn't get diminished there. Again, what you put in is what you put out, is what you get out.
I think the phrase you're using regarding making sure that you do not put in an inauthentic brand is the other side of that, is making sure that it's also realistic, because what the brand thinks the core values are or the way it's presented might be vastly different than the word of mouth aspects that Brandon was talking about or customer feedback. So I think one of the biggest opportunities is making sure that you're putting in a holistic view of the brand and what you want to achieve, how you want to be presented, and that authentic voice from a brand perspective, but also two, making sure that your customers are represented in how they feel currently about your brand is going to be really imperative, because the suggestions that marketers will receive from AI need to be able to close that gap. And if you're only giving it one side of this is what I want to achieve, this is how I want to go about it, you're missing that connection to your customers.
Totally. And I think now more than ever, in my opinion, reviews are all the more important. I know, again, I'm planning a trip. I'm talking to ChatGPT what I want to do, and it suggests, all these great things. The very first thing I'm doing once I know, wow, that activity sounds really fun, I'm going straight to TripAdvisor or Viator, and I'm reading reviews and looking at real customer photos to make sure that what it's telling me is accurate and that it is something I'd actually like to do, to check the price, and to read about those actual real world experiences. Because again, ChatGPT can tell you one thing, but if you go there and see something else, I don't know that I'm going to book it.
Yeah,
it can tell you one thing really confidently too,
Totally.
And then the moment you challenge it, it'll completely flip the script.
Yeah, it's like,
it'll tell you, actually, you're right.
Yes, I get that all the time.
I think, at its core, I think we keep coming back to this idea of travel marketing is definitely going to lean more into how the community is represented and how you can bring the voices of your evangelists from a brand perspective into play. Because are you all familiar with the dead internet theory?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So for those that may not be, the dead internet theory is essentially a cultural critique that everything on the internet has ceased to be human dominated. And especially as AI has become more prevalent in our day-to-day, as you're scrolling through Instagram, you're seeing reels that are completely made from AI, you're seeing AI voiceovers, etc. And it essentially claims that the web is now mostly AI slop. And this is honestly very, very prevalent in some of the feedback that if you scroll through the comments on one of those reels, you will see mixed commentary, but most of the time, my feed at least is showcasing, I can't believe you're using AI for this, blah, blah, blah. You should have used a real human. And from a brand integrity standpoint, that's something to be very careful with, because from a marketing perspective, yes, we can use AI to move faster, to scale our output. From a creative perspective, we can use it to create assets. But at the same time, you need to be cognizant of the backlash that you may encounter. And going back to what Jess was saying about, making sure that you are representative of your authentic brand voice. If your customers are not ready to use it, not willing to accept different AI generated assets, etc., that's something you need to be very careful with, because you don't want to be marketing to them in a way that you think is cutting edge. And in reality, your whole audience is people who just don't want to see anything generated that way. So I think being smart about its application is paramount.
I think it's easy as marketers, because we're in this stuff all day and playing with these tools and experimenting, like Jess, what you said, experimentation is so key right now. And I totally agree. It's easy to think wow, that was cool that I made that thing. But the users, your end audience, people that actually really love your brand and want to connect, because we're relational creatures, actually hate that thing. even though it's cool for you, they don't want that. So I think it is, but I also think that people do understand how AI can be really helpful, and I think they would be very open to it. But yeah, it's a very, very thin line. What are some, it's kind of a random question, but I'm curious for both of you, what are some interesting experiments or kinds of content or things that you've seen either internally or with another brand that you thought were actually, that was pretty cool. That was a cool use of AI or a cool experiment that they ran that I kind of like that, because I do think there is some backlash. There is some negativity and critique that I think is very warranted. And I feel that dead internet theory all the time when I'm scrolling through my feed. Sometimes I'm like, what the heck? Where are like human beings these days? Like I see that same, anyway, so I get it. But sometimes there's some cool stuff that actually is coming out. Does anything come to mind?
I mean, I think, and this isn't necessarily experimentation per se, but I use it a lot specifically to help with data reading. Obviously, there's a ton of data to be had, and we have a whole booking flow for multiple brands to be looking at. And I think it's really, really helpful in finding the story and, feeding it a ton of data that otherwise would have taken hours for me to probably read through, making pivot tables and things like that to try and find, where is the user falling off? Where are they not, where are we not generating revenue? Things like that. I think being able to feed it a ton of raw data and get back a few different answers in a matter of minutes as to where there might be a sticking point or something isn't clear or something to look into, and being able to iterate off of that again in a matter of minutes where something would have taken me hours, I think has been huge. And it's helped find a lot of friction points that I think should help brands moving forward, removing them in the booking flow or on their website or anything like that.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, I would probably say the best use of it is not necessarily from a marketing perspective, outside of Jess's use of it from a data extrapolation, etc. From like an in the wild, we see this in our own platform, but I'm seeing a real shift in just natural voice or natural text implementation. So Switchfly, we have this. You can put into our destination recommendations, essentially what Jess had mentioned. Like, I would like to go to the beach. I want it to be in this country, etc. Give me recommendations. So we have tools like that already, but I think that's across the board. We're not the only platform that's doing it. I know like Booking.com has something similar, and what I think we're seeing the most is just how well systems can make better use of their first-party data and all of the information that they are gathering from booking flows, as Jess mentioned. It's lesser so, and not that it can't be used from a marketing perspective, it absolutely can. I definitely see it more from a product standpoint being, and then I think that is probably the coolest part as a product marketer. Like, we also definitely that use of first party data from a booking perspective. And I think what marketers can take from that is not just your product teams can use that information. You can then use that information. We have data across multiple partners, et cetera, that I take a look at for developing our own assets, right? So from a marketing perspective for individual brands, take a look at your first party data and see, are there any trends in where people are going, or the types of accommodations that are being booked, et cetera, because that can better inform what you might want to put out into the world and what you might want to advertise. And AI really comes into play to make you be able to do that faster and potentially without as many, what's the word I'm looking for? Without as many assumptions. As we marketers, sometimes we do have to assume, like, I don't have the answer for this. And I think AI helps to be able to kind of fill that assumption gap.
I like that. Yeah, both of you, I think, hinted at it's less time is spent on data and analysis, and more time is actually spent on, here's the story. Now, how do I craft, my marketing around that story to, again, build trust and communicate an authentic, a narrative that shapes people's purchasing decisions. I'll say my example would be, I think generative video is pretty I don't know. I don't have any data on whether it works or not, but I see some videos that I think are hilarious. And I saw this one this week on Twitter that was a crab, and somebody put a GoPro camera on a crab and it went down its little hole, and it looked like it was just like a nature video, you know, it went down like a crab hole and you saw these little crabs around. And then it turned this corner and it opens up into this like nightclub DJ, lasers going everywhere, and all the crabs are like dancing in this. And that could have been a great ad for some kind of club or something. I just thought it was so funny because you couldn't do that on your own, you know. Anyway, I think it's hilarious.
You mean you're not going out there training crabs to go to a dance party?
No, I was actually thinking of like hiring like a 3D video person that can make this super complicated minute-long video, and actually you could just prompt it and get it in like 30 seconds, and you have this hilarious video. Anyway, yeah, no, I've been thinking too. Do you think it's easier for upstart brands to get into the market versus the incumbent, you know, larger enterprise players? Like, what's maybe the opportunities or threats for, you know, kind of new competition, if you will? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it levels the playing field. We all have the same version of LLMs at our fingertips. We all have, you know, the same access. And I think that definitely lowers the barrier to more sophisticated marketing efforts. And those smaller brands might be able to capitalize on that for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think I actually read an article, I forget who it was written by, but it was talking about kind of the relation to job loss to AI and things like that. And someone said that, you know, people won't lose their jobs due to AI. They'll lose their jobs because they won't know how to use AI. And I think that's very true. I think that people who know how to use AI will be better off for it. Again, it's all about what you put in. And so if you spend the time to learn it, to understand what it can do to help you, and kind of be iterative with it. Don't expect it to get it right on the first try, you know, especially if you're working on something new. I think being able to use it and use it well, I think is going to be huge for regardless of if you're a huge brand or, you know, a new startup.
I totally agree. And I also think there's another play as well. I heard this from an agency that I know of, that they do not let any of their team members use AI at all. And they make all of their teammates be in the office 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and no AI. And their point is, their brand position is that we want these things to be highly crafted. Like we are a studio. Like we are going to be pixel pushing manually, and we're going to be very relational. And so I think that's an interesting brand strategy as well, or a marketing strategy, that if you push in the exact opposite direction, 100% high quality craftsmanship and no AI, there's actually something there too. Now, it might mean less content, or it might mean very different kinds of marketing, but that'd be an interesting play for upstarts as well, because it might increase trust, which I think is in the name of the game.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that circles back to there will still be people who, one, are behind the curve, or two, do not want to be involved, or, you know, do not appreciate the assistance that AI can provide. And that's fine. That's totally fine. There will always be, you know, an antagonist to innovation. And I think, you know, we see big brands. Apple is a really great example. When they redid their new intro, they did that full intro manually. They could have put that into AI, or, you know, had a creative agency that utilizes the tools and probably done it a lot faster. But they essentially took a brand stance in saying, we are going to do this with real effects. And that's, you know, it garnered a lot of attention from the marketing industry, because it was like, wow, you had these tools at your fingertips and probably could have done this in a much faster way, and you still took the time and invested in the craft. That was a brand play for sure. And I think, going back to my previous statement, it's being intentional with the usage and the implementation, both from a marketing side, a product side, a community building side, because, you know, marketers could deploy AI bots to respond to every comment that they receive on whatever social post that they put out. They absolutely could. But having someone on the other side of that screen to make sure that whatever you've implemented is still ensuring a level of brand integrity and authentic, as Jess was saying, like an authentic brand voice is still like, you can't ever replace that. You still need a human in the loop. And I think that will probably always be the case, or at least in my opinion, it should always be the case, because we may need a part 2 here, but
I know, I was just thinking that.
Because at the end of the day, like AI, no matter if you're using Claude or if you're using Chat or if you're using Gemini, they're working off of relatively the same information. The same user-generated content was put in to train these models. And you need somebody who more intimately knows your brand and the way things should be handled to navigate some of those harder conversations or the more sticky points or the friction points. The last thing that you want is, from an airline perspective, let's say something happens where all the flights got canceled and you have a lot of negative feedback online, you have a lot of comments coming in, etc. And then all you have is an AI bot responding to all of those people, and the model that you've used is not showing any empathy to the scenario that they're in. Whereas if you have a human who, on the other side of that, who's at least monitoring, at least keeping track of things, making sure that the systems that you've deployed are doing the job while reflecting the integrity of the brand, like if you get rid of that, you're good luck. Unfortunately, good luck.
Totally agree. There's an advertiser from which just got outside my mind now, but his name's Rory Sutherland. He wrote a book called Alchemy. It was a fantastic book. And he talks about how 2 things actually that are really great. One is he thinks that everybody should invest more in call centers to have more people talking to other people. He was like, that should be your number 1 marketing budget line item there is, which I find fascinating. And the other thing he says is what he calls a doorman fallacy, which is consultants can come to a hotel and say, oh, to save costs, you should get rid of your doorman because you can get an automatic door. And his point is like, yeah, but doormen do a lot more than just open the door. They are there to greet people. They bring an umbrella. They get the car for you. They tell you where things are at. There's a lot more that goes into your brand perception than just that function. And so he says, be very careful, and I apply this to AI, be very careful about how you define certain things that AI can or can't do, because you might define it one way, remove that thing, and it actually destroys the value of why somebody would interact with your brand, which I think is a really valuable lesson.
Yeah, I think the need for human connection is not going to go away. I think humans are wired that way, and that's not going to change. So I think specifically as it relates to AI, I think it's important for it to be used in a lot of cases, call center is a great example. I think it should be used as a tool to help people learn rather than to replace them. And so, being iterative and communicative with it and going back and forth. And even there have been times where I'm working with AI and I ask it to tell me how it did something so that, hey, okay, now I'm at least learned something. If one day it goes away, hopefully then I know how to do it. But I think, again, that need for human connection, I think, is here to stay.
Yeah, AI is the assistant, not the experience.
Yeah.
Oof, nice. I love that. That's perfect. And there's always going to be the Windleberries among us that are like, you know what? I was just reading his article or his essay last week. It's called Why I Am Not Going to Buy a Computer. And I think he wrote it in the 70s. And I love it. I think he's so right about so many different things. And yet AI is amazing. It's changing everything. Pay attention to it. But yeah, I have so many thoughts. We could talk about this forever.
We're going to do a part 2. We've got to do a part 2.
I feel like I have so much more to say. Yes. Okay. So last question for both of you. What is your final takeaway? Is it a total reinvention, clean slate, get rid of everything? Or is it like, you know what? It's another tool. It's very useful, but in a limited case. What's your thought?
So going back to one of my original points, there's always going to be an audience that is behind the curve. There is always going to be an audience that does not want to or cannot, for whatever reason, adapt to the new tools. And your service is still going to need to treat those people the same way that you treat anybody who has adapted to the latest and greatest. Because as you were saying, Brandon, the 3 of us on this call are marketers. We live and breathe this every day. Our in-laws our, I love my mom dearly. She had to call me to ask me, like, how do I even start using this? And I was like, here are 5 things that I think you could use it for, and like, just try it. It's fine. There is always going to be an audience that you are still going to need to service. And will that curve change in the next 5, 10, 15 years? Absolutely. As things get more mature, as adoption of certain tools becomes greater, absolutely that curve is going to change, but there's still somebody who's going to be behind that curve. And in my opinion, from a marketing standpoint, to go back to the FocusWire article, I completely agree with the thought that I don't think we can throw out traditional channels and legacy channels. I truly don't. I think what we will see over the next couple of years is more of a consolidation of those channels. So for example, if you're using Google Ads to promote, you may no longer be paying for placements on Google search. Maybe you're paying for placements on Gemini, and I think that's something that marketers need to be cognizant of, is like, your tools and the fundamentals that you know today, I don't think are going away. You're still going to need to use them to reach an audience who does not want to or cannot adopt the latest and greatest, but also you're still going to need to know the fundamentals in order to judge whatever AI is trying to tell you to do or how to market. Like, you're still going to need those fundamentals and those legacy channels. So I think as my takeaway is, like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, yes. Don't do that. Just because there's something, like, just because there is a shiny object, and yes, it is great. It, like I said before, it is the assistant to the experience, not the experience itself. And don't just negate everything that has worked up until this point just because there's something new that could work.
That line, I'm going to steal it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think, marketers should throw out everything that they already know. I do think that there needs to be a shift. I think, keep what you know, but shift the way that you're focusing on specifically top of funnel marketing. The way that customers are discovering your brand, specifically in travel, is likely changing or going to change. And so I think making that shift, making sure you're aware of how you're showing up in AI tools. Go into an AI tool, ask it about your brand. Is it saying what you would expect? And if not, maybe you need to make a change. So I think that's really important. And I also think, given that the way customers are going to find you is changing, you need to take another look at, what does your booking flow look like? What does the experience look like when the customer gets there? Because they're now probably in a different headspace than they used to be when they would arrive in your booking flow. And then the product you're offering, is it up to par? Again, is it being, perceived in AI the way that you would expect? And I think then just moving forward, keep your eyes and ears wide open, because the way that your customers are finding you is changing or going to change very soon. And being able to change with that is going to be huge. There might be a time where they don't need your booking flow anymore and they're booking, in Claude. And so again, keeping your eyes and ears wide open as that change happens. It didn't take very long for us to get to this place where everybody has ChatGPT on their phone. So who knows what's next? But I think being able to shift and be nimble and paying attention is going to be huge for especially traveler marketers.
Could not agree more. Perfectly said. Brilliant. Thank you both. This has been a fascinating conversation. I know you, all three of us could sit here and talk for hours about this concept, as most people can. AI is just the talk of the town. But maybe we'll have a part 2 sometime. I think this conversation is fantastic, and especially in travel marketing, as this industry is being disrupted. Things are shifting. But what does that look like? We will find out. It's anybody's game. So thank you both. These are wonderful thoughts, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thanks, Brandon.